Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something pretty major in the philanthropy world. Bill Gates recently announced he's planning to give away, well, almost all his wealth. And there are big changes coming for the Gates Foundation, too.
That's definitely a significant moment. Yeah.
We've got some interesting sources here. CNN Business, BBC News, they give slightly different takes, and also a piece from CNA about the Gates Foundation actually opening an office in Singapore.
Interesting mix.
So our mission really is to try and unpack this, understand the sheer size of this commitment, what it means, and, what it signals for philanthropy going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, when the foundation itself calls it the largest philanthropic commitment in modern history, that kind of sets the stage, doesn't it?
It really does. Makes you think about the impact.
Yeah, the ripple effects.
Okay, so let's get right to it. The headline news. Bill Gates says he'll give away virtually all of his fortune, estimated around $200 billion within the next, 20 years?
That's the plan. And importantly, the Gates Foundation itself has an end date now. They're aiming to wrap up operations by December 31st, 2045.
Wow. Okay, so not perpetual.
Not perpetual. And to give you a sense of the numbers, Bloomberg puts his current worth at about $108 billion. His goal, or expectation, is that by 2045, that number will be down by, 99%.
99%.
Yeah.
That's massive. It
They
speaks
would-
volumes about the pace, right?
Exactly. It's just a really focused, maybe even aggressive push in these next 2 decades compared to a foundation planning to exist forever.
It does feel like a big bet approach, as you said.
Right.
Focusing everything on this time frame.
Yeah. Which has potential upsides, but maybe some risks too, concentrating efforts like
Now,
that.
the why behind it all. He had this quote, people will say a lot of things about me when I die, but I am determined that he died rich will not be one of them.
That's a powerful line. Very direct.
It really is. It makes you wonder about legacy and maybe changing views on extreme wealth.
Well, it definitely signals urgency. He talks about too many urgent problems to solve right now. And, it's interesting. The BBC piece brought up Andrew Carnegie.
Oh, right. The gospel of wealth.
Exactly. From way back in 1889, Carnegie argued the rich had a moral duty to give their money back to society. He even said, the man who dies thus rich dies disgraced.
Yeah, it's quite the historical echo. Dies disgraced.
Uh,
Strong words.
Very strong. But as you hinted earlier, the world's a different place now.
Totally different. The scale of problems, the interconnectedness, it feels like comparing apples and, well, very complex oranges.
That's a fair point. While the core idea resonates, Gates's focus is very specific: global health, poverty, these huge complex issues. And he also seems to feel that, 20 years from now, maybe other people, other wealthy individuals will be better positioned for whatever challenges arise then.
So it's not just about solving today's problems, but also acknowledging future needs might require different approaches.
It seems that way.
Mhm.
And he explicitly links this to the giving pledge he started with Warren Buffett, hoping this sets an example, maybe pushes other billionaires.
Right, encouraging others. And this accelerated giving, he said it's possible because they're not trying to be perpetual.
It frees them up to spend more intensely now, aligned with his values over these 2 decades. It's definitely a shift from their earlier plans.
So what are the big targets for these next 20 years?
Well, the core goals remain, but with this added urgency. Basically, ending preventable deaths in mothers and babies, wiping out deadly infectious diseases, and lifting hundreds of millions from poverty.
Those are huge goals, have been for a while for them.
They have. But the foundation, according to CNN, is also worried. Their CEO, Mark Sussman, mentioned stagnant global health trends,
Stagnant, meaning progress is stalling.
or even reversing, potentially. They see major political and economic headwinds right now, maybe the biggest since they started.
So things like conflict, economic downturns, hitting aid budgets, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Things that could undo the progress they've already made. And remember, they've already put over $100 billion out there since 2000. Vaccines, diagnostics, getting treatments delivered.
Right. Decades of work. So this new pledge is basically doubling down, accelerating that effort despite the headwinds.
Precisely. And interestingly, Gates seems optimistic that AI might help counter some of these challenges.
AI. How does he see that fitting in?
The sources don't go into deep detail, but you can imagine, right, speeding up drug discovery, maybe better diagnostics for remote areas, optimizing how aid gets distributed using data, that kind of potential.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, there's also a political dimension here, isn't there? CNN mentioned the timing coinciding with the Trump administration's push to cut foreign aid and health funding.
Yes, and Gates wasn't quiet about it. He directly criticized Elon Musk's role in that effort, specifically around cuts to U.S. international aid.
What was the specific criticism?
He basically accused Musk's efficiency drive of, in his words, hurting efforts aimed at helping the world's poorest children. Strong language again.
And there was that specific example from the BBC, a hospital in Mozambique.
Yeah, in Gaza province. Grants were canceled, apparently based on some misunderstanding, linking it falsely to funding Hamas. Gates was really upset, pointing out the funds were for preventing HIV transmission from mothers to babies.
That really shows how policy decisions or even misinterpretations can have direct, harmful consequences on the ground.
It does. And CNN noted Gates actually met with Trump back in February to argue against those U.S. aid cuts.
So he was actively lobbying against them?
Seems so. It points to his broader worry about whether rich countries will keep supporting poorer nations.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. What's the rationale there?
Gates himself said it's about accessing the science in Singapore, partnering with the local philanthropic community, and tapping into the research happening there.
So leveraging Singapore's strengths.
Exactly. The Economic Development Board there highlighted Singapore's strategic location and research ecosystem. It's seen as a hub.
And what does economic headwinds mean in their context? Just global uncertainty.
Likely things like recessions, governments cutting back on aid, inflation, making their existing money go less far, just makes achieving their goals harder.
Got it. So the Singapore base is about strengthening ties in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, building partnerships, fostering collaboration. CNA reported Gates met with Singapore's PM Lawrence Wong and Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong.
What did they discuss?
A range of things. Clean energy, vaccines, polio and measles eradication, even nuclear power tech. Suggests potential work with groups like Temasek Trust or the universities there.
Interesting. Now, we should also mention Melinda French Gates. She left the foundation last year after the divorce.
Right. And she had said back in 2022 that she wouldn't be channeling most of her own philanthropy through the Gates Foundation specifically.
So this current push, this 20-year plan, it's very much Bill Gates' direction now for the foundation's final act, so to speak.
It certainly seems that way. It's his vision for this concluding chapter.
And he also tied this whole announcement to Microsoft's 50th anniversary, didn't he?
He did. He said something like, it feels right to mark that milestone by committing the resources he earned through Microsoft back to society.
Adds a personal layer to the timing, kind of a full circle moment.
Yeah, linking the creation of the wealth to its dispersal.
Now look, an organization this big, spending this much money, it's bound to attract some criticism. We should probably touch on that.
Absolutely. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
The BBC article did briefly mention critics who raise questions.
Like what sort of questions?
Things like using charitable status for potential tax advantages, or just the sheer amount of influence the foundation has in global health agendas. We're just noting these exist, not getting into the debates here.
Right, just acknowledging those other perspectives are out there. It's important context for you, the listener.
Definitely. Any entity operating at this scale faces scrutiny.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. We've looked at this huge commitment from Bill Gates, giving away nearly everything.
And the plan to wind down the Gates Foundation by 2045.
We talked about his motivations, that sense of urgency, the historical echoes with Carnegie, but also the modern context.
Yeah, the focus areas for the next 20 years, health, poverty, disease eradication, plus the political backdrop and the strategic move into Singapore.
It really feels like a pivotal moment for philanthropy on a global scale.
It does. And maybe it leaves you, our listener, with something to think about. What are the implications of this kind of accelerated, concentrated giving over just 2 decades?
Can that focused approach really move the needle on such massive global problems in that time frame?
And what does it mean for other philanthropists, for governments? Does this change the landscape?
Yeah, what kinds of new questions does this whole thing raise for you about how large-scale philanthropy works and maybe how it should work in the future? Lots to consider there.